planetary energies are often conflated with feminine and masculine principles, and even our gender glyphs, the symbols associated with male and female, are connected to the planetary glyphs. However, as we evolve in our understanding of these energies, we see that these two planets really have nothing to do with your gender or the equipment you were born with. They are two polarizing forces that we're always vacillating between. And for me, Venus has a lot to do with stillness, appreciation, connection, synthesis. And Mars, on the other hand, is more about separation, our ability to distinguish and survive. And I also compare these two to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So Mars would definitely be the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight involuntary response that we get in moments where we have to survive, or we're maybe competing, or doing something important. And then Venus is that mode of the parasympathetic rest and digest, where we're still enough to sleep, to make love, to eat, to just breathe. And so it's interesting, I think, because our culture is so heavily martial right now. Literally, there's like marshals drawing lines, creating walls, creating borders. And it's really hard to sometimes just be still and enjoy a moment. And I think, though, that stillness is where we get art from, where we get creative inspiration, when we can just sink into sensual appreciation of a moment. And it's interesting because it's very hard, I think, to be in, or even impossible to be in, both at the same time. It's kind of like we're doing this dance between the two. And I think it's helpful to understand where Mars and Venus are in your chart and how they express in your life, because it can help you understand if you more easily fall into one or the other. And of course, there comes a limit when just sitting around eating food, having sex, can be too much, So that's when we have to go get back to work again. But I think it's super helpful to connect to how we express these ways of being. And I think it's also really interesting that the cycles of history kind of follow this modulation. There's a really interesting book called The Fourth Turning, which is a sociological book, and it discusses how following periods of war and upheaval and fighting are these periods, these renaissances, if you will, of creation of culture, of art, where people are, resting and enjoying and feasting and celebrating. And so it just further demonstrates that we tend to polarize, we tend to be in one more than the other and vacillate. And so if you ever have a question about where these two planets are operating for you, or if you want to help understand your astrology chart more, I do offer readings remotely via Zoom, where we can be conferencing, or in person in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, and also Oakland. So if you ever want to reach out, please do.